So I'm really bummed we can't have Ignite tonight. So instead of us all being there together, I figured that I would just share a little bit of the message I was going to share tonight and just put it on here so we could discuss it online. The past couple weeks we've been talking about gods at war. And we've been talking about a couple different idols that are in our lives that take our attention away from following Jesus. We talked about the gods of pleasure, sex, entertainment, all these kinds of things that take us away, food, that take us away from following God. We talked about the gods of love last week, and Nancy spoke, and she talked about how the difference between love and lust and how those things are active in our lives. This week we're going to talk about the god of money. And I just want to take a couple minutes here to kind of run through a passage and talk about how money can be an idol in our lives as well. Before we do that, I want to tell you a little thing. It was in college, and I was during this time that I was walking down the hallway, and on almost every single door were these whiteboards. And so I walked by this one whiteboard, and I thought it was pretty hilarious, because you've heard the statement before that money is the root of all evil, right? Well, it's not exactly what the passage says. We're actually going to look at it tonight. But I thought this was kind of funny, so check it out. I walked by this guy's room, and he must have just broken up with his girlfriend or something, and he didn't really like what was going on. So he made this equation. He said, girls equal time times money. Time equals money. You've heard that statement before. So he said girls equal money squared. And if we know that money is the root of all evil, and money squared is girls, then we know that when we take all that and do all that equation, therefore girls are evil. So I don't know if you agree with that or not. Obviously this guy was having a hard time and he probably just broke up with his girlfriend. But I thought that was kind of funny. But see, in the middle of this whole statement is talking about how the money is the root of all evil. Well, that's not exactly what the statement says. So let's check it out. We're going to read 1 Timothy 6, 6 through 10. Let me read it for you. It says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." I just want to run through a couple ways that I think the idol of money is evident in our lives, and then what we can do about it. So let's check out a couple ways that people with the idol of money react. It says in this passage that people who want to get rich, people who have this idol of money in their mind, and get me here, money isn't just money. Money is possessions, it's the things we try to collect. But in this passage, Paul is saying that it starts with the lure of money or possessions. He calls it a temptation or a trap. Temptation or trap. And I think the biggest trap we fall into that brings us to the point of having the idol of money is when we start to think that our money is our own. Our money is our own. You see, our money isn't ours. How do you have the ability, if you have a job, if you have a place where you get money, how do you have the ability to get that money? What if something happened to you tomorrow and you didn't have the capacity to be able to work anymore? What would happen? In reality, why are we still alive today? It's because God has given us life. And so when we start to think that our money is our own, we start to make an idol out of money and start to kind of lead to this place that could be the lure of temptation, of the idea of having money in the place where God's supposed to be. But you see, God is the reason that we even have the ability to make money or to have possessions. He's the one, every good and perfect gift comes from God, is what James says. So we can't fall into that trap. But it starts with that. It starts with thinking that money is ours. That's why the Bible talks about tithing. And it's not just because we're supposed to give money to the church. But we're supposed to give the first 10% of all we make to remind ourselves, to show us that our money is not our own. And I was just talking with somebody this morning about how awesome it is that they just took that step recently. And how awesome it is that when you take that step to make sure that you tithe your money to God and say, hey God, I want you to use this for that, then all of a sudden money's provided where you never thought it could be. But it starts with the lure of money or possessions. Idolatry of money comes second, where it continues with the lust of money or possessions. Paul says in here, they fall into temptations and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires. There's a lot of foolish and harmful things that start to happen when you start to make money into an idol. You start to make decisions with money and possessions that go against any wisdom. I was in the mall the other day and I was walking around thinking, how much of this stuff do we really need? But we always walk by these signs that say you need this and you need that. And all of a sudden we start spending credit cards, and all of a sudden we get into debt. And far enough down this way, we've gotten so far into this crazy mess that we don't know how to get out of it. So if you're in a lot of debt, if you see these things in your life, you see that it's such a temptation for you to fall into these things, then maybe you're starting to make foolish and harmful desires. And that's where the lust comes in, that we're saying we need these things. And finally, the idol money is recognized when it finishes with plunging men into ruin and destruction. It says, after many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. You know, there's so many safety measures in society today that make it so that we probably won't be outwardly in this place of ruin and destruction. You know, if you lose your job, you have a way to get some money, and there's a lot of ways we can declare bankruptcy. There's a lot of places that we can find help if we need help today, and that's not a bad thing. But I think it doesn't happen on the outside as much anymore where there's ruin and destruction. It happens on the inside. Where we get to the point where money is such an idol to us that it governs every decision that we make. You guys remember Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory? It's a guy, I love this character, Augustus Gloop, right? You know, he's the big guy and he comes around, he eats all these candy bars trying to find the golden ticket. Well, when he finally gets to the place and they're walking around, he gets so close to this pool of chocolate that he accidentally falls in, and he can't help but get so close to it, and he just wants to dive into it. So he dives in, he gets sucked up into this tube, and he's so big that he gets stuck in the middle of this tube. Sometimes, in a weird way, I think that's what happens where we fall into destruction. We're right there on the edge, and we start to see that this is something working in our lives, but all of a sudden we fall into it, and inwardly we're so governed by money and possessions that we can't even see past it. And the main point he makes is that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It's not that money itself is evil. Money can be used in so many good ways, and sometimes the amazing Christians have used money and made tons of money, and then they've given it away in amazing ways. So it's not that money itself is evil, it's that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. He says even here at the end that some people, after passing by this, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So what do we do? Just a couple quick things. Number one, understand that you will only find contentment in Jesus. Listen to this thing I found in a commentary. It said, the fact is, contentment does not come from owning whatever we want, for there is no end to what we want. A Christian approach to life can never make a central feature of the acquisition of material things. See, it's only through a relationship with Jesus Christ that you're going to be content. And sometimes we pursue money and possessions thinking that we're going to find some contentment or some comfort in those things, and we never will. We'll always want more. So the Christian life is about getting to know Jesus Christ to the full extent and allowing Him to be our full contentment. And he says here, godliness with contentment is great gain. The next verse, he says, for we brought nothing into this world and we can take nothing out of it. And I think that's the second point. Understand that money and possessions are passing away. Listen to this statement again from the same commentary. It says, the saying also highlights the transitoriness of human life. Contentment in the present depends on a belief in a future which is independent of material things. Real living is infinitely more than the gaining of what is merely transitory. You see, we're going to go have this life, and it's a very short life, and then we're going to go to either heaven or hell in the end. The Bible says it's very clear that we are eternal beings, that we will live forever, but the decision is whether we're going to know Jesus Christ and go to heaven or not. Wherever we go, though, what is going to matter once we get there? When we die, none of this stuff goes with us. You know, the ancient pharaohs used to bury all this stuff together so they could take it to the next life, but you don't take anything from this life. Understand that money and possessions are passing away. So what can we do in this life with those things? And that kind of goes to the third thing. Understand what is important. He says here, but if we have food and clothing, we'll be content with that. You know, if you have food, clothing, most of us in this world do. Most of us in America at this time do. And understand what is important and use your money for that. What's going to matter in the end? Did you need that couple $100 thing that you just bought? Did you need those jeans that you just bought? They're so expensive. Did you need these other things? None of those things are necessarily inherently evil. But how could we use our money for good? Because remember, if your money is really not yours in the end, what would Jesus do with your money? Because it's really His in the end. So there's going to be some questions below this to discuss, and I hope, I'm still bummed that we didn't get to meet tonight, but I hope that this could be a good discussion starter with some of the people around you, and maybe gather together, call up some people, and just say, hey, what do you think about this? Maybe study this passage. It's in 1 Timothy 6. And I hope you have a good week. Hopefully we'll see you next week.